So the Republican Party, founded in 1854, specifically to stop the expansion of slavery. So the Republican Party was founded to stop slavery. Let's leave that right there. What? Under Abraham Lincoln, the GOP oversaw the Emancipation Proclamation and championed the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. This is how it changed, and I do believe we're in the middle of that shift. We're in the middle of another shift. I don't know how it's going to be explained or documented, but we're in the middle of another flip. I don't know if it's going to be a flip or what, but something's changing in the political waters. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not talking about amongst politics, but I'm talking about amongst the people. Something is changing. Like I said, black people ain't stupid no more. So, something's changing. I do believe you don't necessarily have to look at it in a sense of what they can do for black people or what have they done for black people lately. You know what I mean? I think you need to look at it in a sense of what can black people do for themselves. Ultimately, you can't keep like relying on these politics. You can't put too much faith in your vote. And because, like I said, first of all, there's too many stupid people voting. There's too many stupid people voting. People vote because of who they like. People vote for who's popular, who's cool, who's attractive. And nobody votes on, not a lot of Americans are voting on political policies and views and political stances and views. Like, they're just not, they're stupid. And so you can't rest assured that your vote will count when so many other flocks and masses of Americans are voting over here. You know what I'm saying? What's your one little vote? But people died for that right. So you always have to bear that in mind, right? By the 1980s, the geographic and ideological strongholds had flipped. The South became a Republican's bastion, and black voters moved almost entirely, roughly 90%, to the Democratic Party by the 1980s. And then this is where you have, Jesse Jackson running for president. Jesse Jackson, and for those who may not know, Jesse Jackson was a close associate of Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King has a very special place in the hearts of baby boomer and Gen X black people. You know what I mean? But like I said, the baby boomers are dying off, and the Gen Xers are now the Gen Xers are beginning to wake up. The millennials and the Gen Zs, they don't really care for any kind of allegiance. They're like, I'm gonna vote for who makes sense. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like a few more generations removed, and the parties are gonna look entirely different. You know what I mean? It is what it is. The paradigm is shifting. And black people are getting smarter. You know what I mean? I think that's safe to say. I think is it safe to say? Black people are getting smarter. Now, what does that imply? Initially, black people were stupid. Like, you know what I'm saying? What does that imply, right?
Close. Democrats don't care about black people, and they don't care about people. They don't care about people of color, and the Republicans do, and that's a misconception.
And you know what? I agree with you 100%. People don't know that the Democrats is the party of the KKK.
Yep.
People don't know that the Republicans are the party that freed the slaves.
Yep.
The Democratic Party during that era was rooted in the South and served as a primary defender of slavery and states' rights. Because you got to remember, this was the main moneymaker for those red states, for the states that are red now. That was their main moneymaker. You know what I'm saying? Slavery. So it's like, and that's pretty much why when slavery ended, the South became pretty much desolate. Of course, if you were a black person in America at that time, you would more than likely be Republican. Magical. A lot of people think that the KKK was founded just out of just pure utter racism. No, it was a political party. It was a political paramilitary to the Democratic Party. So historically, Nick Cannon's quote may be a little inaccurate, but yet it is still relevant. You see what I'm saying? It's still relevant. So Roosevelt, basically Roosevelt turned black people blue. That's basically what it's saying. He offered a lot of subsidy. You know what I'm saying? He offered a lot of subsidy and attracted black voters, pretty much, especially the black voters in the South. You know what I mean? Because now, you know, the Civil War is over. We're now a union, so we need the South now. The South is a part of us now. We need the South, and we need those Southern votes. You know, and Roosevelt happened to be a Democrat, and he wanted to attract, you know, black votes, attract the black vote. And so, even though the Democrat was originally racist, or originally, you know, rooted in the KKK, but he wanted to flip that, because you got black people switching over to the Democrats, even though the Democrats were originally racist, and then you got white people in different parts of the country, some switching over to Republicans, some switching over to Democrats, simply because the agenda changed. You know what I mean? Roosevelt was trying to appeal to the blacks, even though he was Democrat. You know what I mean? So the agendas changed, and now this is where things begin to flip. So the Republicans supported the Civil Rights Act. That's crazy. You wouldn't think that, right? And so, but for as long as I can remember, the Democratic Party was considered a black party, right? If you were black, you were typically or more likely or statistically more likely to vote blue, right? But why? No one ever questioned why. I mean, I think most black people, we don't question why. As children, we're taught, when we ask our parents why, it's a sign of disrespect. But it starts in the home, you know. And in the black community, a lot of how black people raise their kids is handed down generationally, you know. And so, in the same way, a child is seen as being disrespectful or not disruptive, but disobedient for asking why, is in the same vein, whereas a black person in the black community asking why do we vote Democrat? Why do we vote Democrat regardless of who's running? You know what I mean? And I think a lot of the undertone is because when we look at the Republicans, we see a lot of them on the Republican side. We see a lot of the red hats and the extremists, the extreme conservatives. You know what I mean? And we automatically assume that they're just anti-black outright because of the things that they stand for seem to be anti-black people. You know what I mean? A lot of the rules and regulations and laws and policies and subsidies in place that support black people, they're the ones that want to tear down. So inherently, because you're black, you are to vote blue, right? But that's changing. I feel like that's beginning to change. But yes, I do believe to a large degree. These are subjective words, right? Large. We're not quantifying it, but we're just throwing it out there. I do believe that to a large degree, black people have been stupefied into politics. You know, where we've been told to vote for who we like, who's sexy, who's cool, who's popular. You know, and we don't necessarily and up to this point we haven't necessarily been coached on, you know, voting for policies, voting for stances, voting for political views and philosophies, and voting, you know. And Cannon expressed appreciation for Trump's directness. He said, "Mother effers, clean the house, and doing what he said he was going to do." Now, how many politics do what they say they're going to do, right? You can hate, and I speak to my friend about Trump all the time. I speak to a good friend of mine about Trump all the time, and you know, they'll say, "Oh, Trump this, oh, Trump that, Trump this, Trump that. He's such an idiot. He's such an idiot." How much of an idiot is he? You know what I'm saying? How many politicians have done what they said they're going to do? You know what I mean? And that kind of effectiveness can be threatening. It's threatening to a degree. You know what I mean? Because it's like, well, damn, like Nick Cannon said, he's cleaning house. He's not playing around. And as threatening as it may be, you have to respect it. You know, you have to respect it. And that's a president's president. You know, you're not just... Now, maybe it's him being effective, or maybe it's people and agencies in place that are, you know, pushing the envelope and moving the needle and turning the knobs. But nonetheless, it's under his regime, you know? And, you know, there are very few moves that he's made, whether or not they may be beneficial to black people in the black community in America in the long run, they're beneficial to America. You know what I mean? And like, you ain't gotta like it, but you gotta respect it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is what it is.